All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're cracking open the financial reports for Adani Power. And trust me, there's a wild story hiding in these numbers. It's a story about a company that went from losing hundreds of crores to making thousands in profit. So, how does a turnaround that massive actually happen? Let's find out.
So this is really the central question, isn't it? It sounds kind of impossible when you say it out loud. A company is just bleeding money quarter after quarter, and then suddenly it's generating these huge profits. We're going to dig into the numbers and see if we can solve this mystery together. Okay, so before we get to the good part, the massive profits, we really need to understand just how deep the problem was. This wasn't a one-off bad quarter or a single bad year. It was a real, persistent struggle. So let's turn back the clock and see what was going on.
If you look at the time between, say, 2018 and 2020, a pretty worrying pattern starts to show up. Quarter after quarter, the company was just really struggling to get on solid ground financially. Let's look at a few specific examples to see what I mean.
Let's start back in late 2018. The company reported a loss of 121 crores. Now, to put that into perspective, that's like losing over a crore every single day for 3 months. That is some serious financial pressure. Now, jump forward to the middle of 2019. And yep, same story. Another loss, this time 77 crores. The key thing here isn't just the number, it's the consistency. This shows us it wasn't just a blip. There was an ongoing issue. And it didn't stop there.
Even going into 2020, the story was pretty much the same. Another quarter, another loss, this time 79 crores. So you can see, across several years, there's this clear picture of a company stuck in the red. Which leads to the big question, why? What was draining all the cash?
All right, to find that answer, we've got to pop the hood and look at the engine of any business. What's coming in versus what's going out.
You know, it all comes down to a really simple idea, but it is everything in business. If you make more money than you spend, you've got a profit. If you spend more than you make, you've got a loss. And for Adani Power back then, that balance was definitely tipped the wrong way.
Okay, this chart right here, this is pretty much the smoking gun. When you look at the expenses for that loss-making quarter in 2019, one category just completely dwarfs everything else: finance costs. This is basically interest on loans, and at 305 crores, it was the single biggest thing draining the company's money.
This really shows you the core problem. Think of it like this. Income is water you're pouring into a bucket. But those massive finance costs, that's not a small leak. That's a giant hole in the bottom of the bucket. No matter how much money was coming in, it was just draining out even faster. That was the mountain they had to climb. So, we've seen the problem. Years of losses, all driven by these huge costs. But that is not where this story ends. Not even close. Now, let's fast forward and see how things started to change. Dramatically.
Okay, so I want you to hold that picture of consistent losses in your mind. And now, get ready for a huge shift. Because the company we see in the 2024 reports, it's like we're talking about a totally different business.
And here it is. This is the big reveal, the climax of the story. In the second quarter of 2024, Adani Power didn't just stop losing money. It posted a staggering profit of 2,409 crores. I mean, just think about that. From losing 77 crores to making over 2,400 crores in profit, the reversal is just mind-blowing.
So how in the world do you make sense of a swing that big? Well, the best way is to put the numbers right next to each other. Let's do a direct comparison to really see the scale of this thing.
All right, let's put these two quarters head to head. Back in Q2 2019, income was just 262 crores, not even enough to cover the 340 crores in expenses. Now look at Q2 2024. Income exploded to over 11,000 crores. That's not just a little growth, that's a complete transformation of how much money the company can make, and it just blows the expenses out of the water.
Honestly, this visual says it all. On the left, you've got that tiny little bar dipping below the line. That's the 77 crore loss from 2019. And on the right, that massive, towering bar is the 2,409 crore profit in 2024. It's not just growth, it's a complete flip. You couldn't ask for a better picture of a turnaround.
Okay, so let's boil this whole thing down to a few key points. First, Adani Power pulled off a complete 180, going from losing money all the time to making huge profits. Second, the engine behind that change was a massive, monumental jump in income. And third, that completely flipped the company's entire financial story on its head, with money coming in now comfortably beating money going out. And all of that leaves us with one final, really important question. We've seen what happened in the numbers, but the real story is always in the how and the why. A turnaround this big doesn't just happen by accident. It points to a major shift in strategy, in operations, or maybe even in the market itself. So the question to think about is, what exactly did Adani Power do to engineer this incredible transformation, and what does it tell us about where they're headed next? That's the real story the numbers are hinting at. Thanks for digging into it with me.